This planet is not a metaphorical, poetic prison. It's a literal prison and is run ultimately by a very bad group of extraterrestrials that we call the bad ETs. The chaos is just enormously going to happen. The U.S. government, the economy, the currency is I can't see how it's not going to collapse. The planet has been adjusted in terms of the masses to be ready for this moment. You can't tell me the control isn't deep. It's deep. And they use fear and intimidation to stop things from coming out.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Watch Mojo's Unveiled podcast. I am your host, Rob. And before we kick off today's episode, I've got a special announcement to make. We are launching the Unveiled podcast community. So you can join up by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code that you see on the screen right now. And what you will get is exclusive information about the Unveiled podcast. You will get alerts when new episodes are released. And I know if you're following us on YouTube, it can be difficult to know because Watch Mojo publishes a lot of videos. So sometimes our podcast episodes can get lost in the shuffle. But if you sign up for the community, you will know right away when a new video is out. And you will also have the ability to send in your questions and suggestions for upcoming episodes via text message. Standard data and messaging rates apply for this. And currently, we are only launching this in the United States. But if you are outside of the US, we are planning to roll it out internationally as well. So stay tuned for that. But if you are able to sign up, please do so. Help us shape the future of disclosure and join us on our mission to unveil the truth. Today's guest, backed by popular demand, is Dr. Courtney Brown. He is a mathematician, social scientist, and founder of the FARSIGHT Institute, which is an organization dedicated to the scientific application of remote viewing. And he joins us again today to talk about the latest developments that he has uncovered with FARSIGHT. Courtney, thank you for joining us again.
Hey, Rob, it's always great to be here.
Excellent. You are our first three-time guest on the podcast. Our first two episodes are amongst the most viewed ones that we have released. So clearly a lot of people are interested in what you have to say. So let's pick it up basically where we left off the last time. You had mentioned that a lot of chaos would be unfolding in 2025. As we record this, it is late October. What's your assessment of how the year has gone so far? Has anything surprised you? Or is everything pretty much going on track with what FARSIGHT has predicted?
We've been doing forecasts and we've been doing remote viewing studies for a very long time. And we are the only venue where you get public projects where you actually see the remote viewing, all done under totally blind conditions and with total scientific verification of everything. And you see everything. We don't hide anything back. You even see when the remote viewers are told what the actual target was. Everything is recorded live on video. Everything done, scientifically squeaky clean. And there's also been a tremendous amount of change that's been happening on the extraterrestrial realm and the extraterrestrial front of things. There are Psyops going on right now. There is a tremendous amount of chaos in the world. In the stuff that we have been talking about in terms of our own remote viewing projects, these are the best remote viewers that exist. And they have huge public track records, all verified, all done under blind conditions. We have been talking about the chaos in the world and how it's coming and unfolding every step. We have various projects that we do this on, especially our deep news projects, as well as our mysteries projects. And we've also been communicating directly with the extraterrestrials. Now, let me say this. This is really important for your audience to get. The total mainstream, everybody on the mainstream, is trying to divert you away from the reality of what this place actually is. This planet is not a metaphorical, poetic prison. It's a literal prison and is run ultimately by a very bad group of extraterrestrials that we call the bad ETs. Now, everything you get in mainstream media, absolutely everything, in some way, shape, or form, is influenced by that group of bad ETs that run this place as a prison. It's going back thousands and thousands of years. And one of the ways they control this is by keeping their own presence hidden. There are written agreements between the United States government, signed, sealed, and delivered, and this group of extraterrestrials. That's not in dispute if you know anything about this. Chaim Eshed, the former CEO of the Israeli Space Directorate, and he's currently a professor, but he was also a decorated general. He has talked about the written signed agreements that the United States made with these extraterrestrials and the contact that not only the United States government has, but the Israeli government has with this group of extraterrestrials. And you know, and if you don't have to believe me, just Google it. Haim Eshed extraterrestrials. You can see what he said. He thought he was going to get away with it in a Hebrew publication that was only in Hebrew, but it was immediately translated into a billion languages. So it's not a dispute that these written agreements exist. The basic issue is that if there are bad ETs, then there are also good ETs. And those are the ones that are trying to create a prison breakout on this planet. We're trying to end the system. If you have on the bad ET side written agreements that stipulate that there must be absolute total secrecy of the extraterrestrial presence on Earth, that's the only way they can keep the prison a prison. It's got to be hidden. It's got to be secret. It's got to be in a situation where no one even knows that there are extraterrestrials. So that this disinformation, constant ways of confusing people, if that is what is going on, and this is their prison, then obviously the good ETs have a very difficult time getting to people because the entire hierarchy, the political elite, the military elite, everybody, they're very caught up in this entire thing. They're very caught up in this entire issue of trying to get through information into a prison population that's totally controlled. So what we have now is we have a lot of bad things happening. Psyops are happening, chaos going on in the world, and we've been showing this in advance, month after month after month, giving you a 2 years advance notice of what's all this is going on. But in addition, the good ETs are desperately trying to reach out to say, we don't go along with this. We want to communicate. We want to communicate. So they have been meeting with us and absolutely insisting that we video record their meetings with us for years. And they're the ones who are insisting. We didn't want to publish these videos where we're actually meeting with them because we didn't want to go through the ridicule, the laughs. I'm a professor at a major university. I don't like to be laughed at or scorned and saying, he's talking to extraterrestrials. But the extraterrestrials insisted that this be the record, that we actually publish the videos of this. So we have been doing that for years now. But there's been total suppression of what we've been trying to do. But you can't blame the ETs. They're trying to get through. They don't want a situation where when disclosure finally happens, you said, but you never even tried to tell us anything. They want to say, what do you mean we never tried to tell you anything? So we have been recording these video recordings of our meetings with the extraterrestrials, very often in secret locations that are made at the beach in the middle of the night so no one can see us, so we're safe. And there's also a lot of ET security people always around whenever we have these meetings. But also we have a boardroom meeting, so we have all of our FARSIGHT remote viewers actually interacting with them, and they can see them. They're right at the table. And so you can actually you have a situation in which the extraterrestrials are saying, we are meeting with you because we're trying to explain how to communicate with other people, with other extraterrestrials. We're trying to show how it's done. So they're showing us, helping us do that so that everybody can see us doing that and trying to publish it. Now, look what's going on in the world right now. There's this 3-eye atlas thing going on, this so-called comet or something that's going on. I don't know what it is. It could be extraterrestrial. It could be just a comet. I don't know what it is. We haven't done any work on it. But look at what's going on with this. You've got mainstream people, physicists, astronomers from Harvard, coming in, getting on the airways all over the place. That immediately tells you something's going on. FARSIGHT is shadow banned everywhere. We are the absolute biggest venue for remote viewing on the planet. No, there's no question. Nobody does this more than what we do. You can't even find us on Google if you do a Google search on remote viewing. You won't even find us. We had one follower actually try to see because the Google algorithm adapts when you're trying to actually search for us. And typically they place us down on the 10th page, which is like, it's 10 items per search on every page. 10 pages, you're down to 100 before you even find, FARSIGHT. And then this guy, he was from New Zealand. He's a very nice guy. He kept on trying to follow, and as he kept on trying, it could tell that he was searching for FARSIGHT. And we actually took the records of it because we have the Google search algorithm stuff where we get the way to follow everything that's happening on our site. And as he kept on searching, it kept on placing FARSIGHT farther and farther and farther, and it finally stopped at number 250. That's 25 pages down he had to go before he could find it. Yet we're the only venue that has full public projects on our streaming service, which is the major place where we put everything, farsightprime.com. He couldn't even find us. And on FARSIGHT, and we are the largest. So people find us anyway, but it's all word of mouth. Mm-hmm. So we are trying to show everything that we're trying to do. And on farsight.org, which is, by the way, that website. Okay.
We'll have links to it in the
FARSIGHT, on farsight.org, we not only have all of our all of the explanations of all of our procedures and everything like that, but we also have the transcripts, literal transcripts that are AI ingestible. So anybody's AI can, and you did this on a previous venue, yes, and previous time that we came, you did this where you take the transcripts and you upload them into your AI, and their AI tells you in a conversation what's actually going on with all of our stuff. So, so we actually have an ability to not only do the remote viewing, but show the statistics for everything that we do, the verification, let the AI ingest everything, digest it, and explain it all to you so you can see it's real. Yet you can't even find us. Try to find us on YouTube. Just go remote viewing. Now, you can find us on Google or YouTube if you search for FARSIGHT, FARSIGHT, but you can't find us if you look for YouTube. There's total censorship on this, and we wouldn't be censored if we didn't have something important to say. Yeah. That's exactly it. You only censor people that you don't want them to see. And so, and if you, I'm sorry to go on this much like this, but do you want me to talk for a second about what's going on with 3i Atlas?
Well, yes, I do want to get there, but I had a couple specific questions about things that you mentioned.
Go ahead, but remember 3i Atlas because
it's noted down. We'll get into that for sure. But you mentioned also on previous episodes about the written agreements that exist between the government and Bad ET. And I would assume that this has nothing to do with the president of the United States or elected officials who are kind of like temporary employees, but rather this must be a deep state thing. Is that correct? Like these are entrenched people who have signed these agreements that are really deep down in the government.
I don't know who actually penned it, who actually put the signatures on it, but I'm assuming it was a president of the United States. But whoever did it, organized it and made it happen so that the hierarchy it went right to the top in terms of who actually signed it, because it continues administration after administration after administration. The good ETs, the ones that we work with, the ones that we have video recordings of our meetings so you can actually see, they're really trying to communicate. On November 13th of 2024, in one of our board meetings, they said they were going to show up with thousands and thousands of ships all over the place, and everybody would be able to see them, and you could go out with your cell phone cameras and everything. We published it on November 15th. I was really nervous about that because how often do you say you forecast something, predict something, and then it doesn't happen and you fall flat on your face? And this was something they said was going to happen right away. And I said, gosh, okay. But we do what they tell us. They told us to do it. And on November 18th, the drones exploded all over the world. The government tried to cover it up. They said they didn't know what it was. And they said it was an Iranian mothership using Chinese tech. That lasted 2 hours. They pulled it. And then a couple weeks later, they said it was a Chinese mothership. That lasted a week or so. Then they pulled that. And then President Trump said they were all experimental aircraft approved by the FAA. That's crazy because they flew all over the world and the FAA has no jurisdiction anywhere else all over the world. So the whole thing is lying from top to bottom. But our side tried desperately to get your attention. They put tens of thousands of ships all over the place, and it panicked the government so much they were for months. They said we don't know what they were. That's huge. Do you realize that means that the government wasn't in control of those drones? And so, you know, I'm sorry. What did you say? You asked a question, Chris. You asked a
My
question, Rob,
initial
and I.
question was about the written agreements, but
Oh yeah.
you kind of answered that. But I do have a follow up about the
Okay.
drones, because something else that you said was that they informed you that bigger ships were on the way. And
Yes.
to my knowledge, I haven't heard about any situations where bigger ships were spotted. Is that still the case? Is that what you're still predicting, or has there been any
There's
change in
only
that?
there's only one time ever that they gave us specific dates that something would happen, and that was November 13th, and they showed up on November 18th. That's the only time ever they've given us dates. And I've asked them why they don't give us exact dates, and they say because it's a war, and everything's changing. The other side knows exactly what we're doing. You're putting it on videos and everything. There's no secrets anymore. Wars on the galactic level don't occur because of secrecy. They go because of there's strategy that goes on, but it's not everybody knows what everybody else is doing, so you never know exactly when something is going to happen. But the next big thing is there's going to be bigger ships, and in terms of that type of phenomenon. So they had the many small ships, and now they have the next one is bigger ships, but they didn't say when. In our enthusiasm as humans, not because the ETs told us, but we make mistakes at FARSIGHT. And in our enthusiasm, we said, well, that's going to be the next big thing. So we just assumed it was going to be soon. But they didn't tell us, and they don't correct us when we make these mistakes because they want us to learn. Stick to the telepathic communication because it's all done. It's not done in English. It's done in telepathy. I mean, they're sitting right at the board table, but the communications are coming in our head. And when they tell us things, they want us to learn, don't exaggerate, don't go beyond what we're actually saying. So they don't correct us. They let us make the mistakes. They're free will ETs. If we make a mistake of saying we think when it will happen, when they didn't tell us when it will happen, that's a lesson we have to learn. And that's what humanity has to learn. Don't get into an argument when an ET is telling you something. Don't get into an argument and say, okay, well, you say this is going to happen. Okay, it's got to happen tomorrow. It didn't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. If you're having a conversation with somebody, and then you say, okay, well, let's go to lunch. Okay, and the person says, okay, we're going to lunch tomorrow at such and such a restaurant. And you didn't say when you were going to go to lunch or what restaurant you can do. You just said at some point in the future you're going to go to lunch. What do you do with somebody like that? Do you get into a fight right then and there with it, or do you just sort of let it go and walk away? And then just don't show up at the restaurant. So that's what it's sort of like dealing with humans. We're so excitable about telling exactly when things happen, but the next step is big ships. But now I have a better idea when the big ships are, when the next stage of the big ships, because they've been telling us constantly in very great detail for some years now about the chaos that's going to be enwrapping this planet, and we see it happening before us, right before our eyes. I don't see any way to avoid it at this point. The chaos is just enormously going to happen. The U.S. government, the economy, the currency is I can't see how it's not going to collapse. And the war in Ukraine, I can't see how that's not going to spread into Western Europe. And the stuff that's in the Middle East, this peace agreement between Hamas and Israel, I didn't see how that would last more than a week. And no one's going to ever trust, any side on any agreement because they know they're going to keep on fighting. So given that, I can't see how it's not going to have Israel saying that they have to have a major attack on Iran. Iran knows this, so I can't imagine how Iran's not going to be responding. And I think what we're definitely going to be seeing is an existential threat on both Iran and Israel, both facing an existential threat. Israel wants to break up Iran. That's not in dispute. Iran wants to stay together as a country. Israel wants to break it up like they broke up Syria. On the other hand, Iran wants to get rid of Israel. Iran has thousands of missiles that can overwhelm the Iron Dome that they have. The only way Israel can survive is a total major commitment by the United States to attack Iran at the same time. Israel cannot survive the thousands of drones that the Iranians have. So they would have won the last war and to basically stopped Israel from existing if they didn't stop after 12 days. And the reason they stopped after 12 days is the United States threatened to attack Iran, and the Iranians didn't want to get into a direct confrontation with the United States. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I can't see how Israel's not going to do it, given the fact that Hamas is still there and Hezbollah is reinvigorating all throughout Lebanon. It's going to happen. The only way to sort of slow that down is to stop Iran from actually feeding the stuff into that. So if you look at the stuff that's going on in Europe right now, I can't see how Russia's not going to start bombing or sending missiles into the weapons depots and factories in Western Europe, because those depots and factories are feeding the missiles that are getting deeper and deeper inside Russia. And there's a lot, if you listen to scholars inside Russia, that's what they're talking about. Putin, as much as you may say, is the aggressor here, he's actually holding back. All of his advisors and academic people around the country are desperately saying, stop this. Stop holding back. Those missiles are coming out of these factories and these countries. Just get, hit where the missiles are coming from. And Putin's the one who's actually saying, no, we can't do this. We have to hold back. We have to hold back. We have to hold back. And he's trying to keep it isolated just in Ukraine. He doesn't want a war to expand. He doesn't want a war between Russia and all of NATO. I can't see how that's going to be avoided. I don't see how this is going to happen. But the ETs have been telling us about this forever. They said that these crises were originally designed by the bad ETs, but they were supposed to happen over a period of like 30 years to keep the planet in a constant state of turmoil, literally to distract them like a magician who does one thing with one hand and another thing with another hand, so that the humans don't focus on what actually is the bottom line for all of these things, which is the bad ETs actually doing this stuff to keep us in a state of confusion. The good ETs are taking full responsibility for taking all of these crises that they did not create, but crushing them in time so that they all happen at the same time. I don't know how they did it, manipulating whatever, but all these things happening in Europe, in the Middle East, and now looks like we're going to have a major set of conflicts in Venezuela, and it looks like it's going to spread into Colombia, and I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up invading Mexico, because there's good solid reasons for why you can sort of draw the dots. Just start speculating. Venezuela is not the drug pin of the South America. It's Colombia. Venezuela has oil and it has rare earths, and that's what the United States want. They don't want Maduro in there because they don't have the solid access to all those resources. It's money, it's resources. China controls 80% of all of the rare earths on the entire Earth, on the entire planet. Now, that's not meaning that they're only available in China, but they have the production facilities set up to be able to do that. Venezuela has lots of rare earths, and they have tons of oil, and they have emeralds. They have all types of like minerals and stuff like that. It's a rich place. Colombia's got to be next, and they're starting to talk about Colombia now, because that's where the drugs actually come out of. But then they all sift through, and the cartels are all funneled in and focused in Mexico. Mexico is simply a failed state. It's like Somalia. It's just a failed state. The cartels run Mexico. So it's only a matter of time before Donald Trump or somebody says, we need to go into Mexico. And they're going to talk about controlling the cartels. But the reality is, Mexico has enormous resources. They have oil, they have rare earths, they have all types of stuff. They'd love to be able to, they have to have an excuse for going into Mexico. But the reality is there's wealth in there. So what you're talking about is chaos happening all over at the same time, and the U.S. and the U.S. economy spinning out of control at the exact same time. And the ETs have been telling us they want this to happen. They don't want this to be nice. They want this to happen because that will break down the control system that the bad ETs have set up. And finally, the big ships can come in. Finally, you can actually get a conversation going with the good ETs. And so the stuff that we have available for you to see now, of all the conversations that we've been having with the extraterrestrials, they say, we want that to be a model. That's why they've been helping build FARSIGHT. That's why the military, U.S. military, has allowed us to exist. The U.S. military has the capability of snuffing out any ET UFO type group that raises their head too big. I have actually been to meetings, scientific meetings that deal with some subjects, but respected scientists that deal with some subjects dealing with paranormal, UFOs, and stuff like that. I actually see the military guys walking the halls and talking. They're intel people. They're card-carrying intel people. I know their names. I see them walking up and down the halls, making sure that nothing gets published. I had one of my own articles that was accepted in a major journal, the Journal of Scientific Exploration. It had the best reviewers. And Daryl Bem was the reviewer, in fact, for it, and it was accepted. It was dealing with an anomaly on Mars that was clearly an ET facility on Mars, and we had lots of remote viewers doing it, lots of remote under blind conditions. They described it, and it was fully accepted. It had gone through page proofs. It was to be released in 10 days. In 10 days. 10 days. And it was suddenly pulled. Now, there was stuff that happened when it was pulled. I don't believe for a second that it was pulled without interference, but it was pulled immediately, and some stupid explanation was given for why it had to be pulled. And it was pulled, and then it was sent out for reviews. And you know who the reviewers were? The military intel guys that are so bad, that are so problematic. The name John Alexander. He was the military intel people never retire, so-called retired. He was my arch enemy because he was the military intel people, always trying to control things that I want to do with that organization. It was sent to him of all people. And the editor-in-chief knew full well that guy was my opposing enemy. That's not a blind review. And the guy knew who it was. It wasn't a blind article, and it was pulled. You tell me what was going on. This type of interference happens all the time. Now, this article we published later on FARSIGHT Press, but and you can get it, you can see it on our website, farsight.org. At the very bottom, you can see a link to it. Now, the reason I can say it was John Alexander, because normally I don't mention names, is he was so cocky about it. He published a book, and on page 125, I believe it was, or something around 125, he actually boasted about how he stopped the article. So it's not a secret. So I don't worry about being sued because he put it in his own goddamn book. And he said, I stopped Courtney Brown's article from being, he personally took credit for doing that. So like, what can I say? And so this is the evidence that you have for this type of thing happening. And, then you say, well, you just can't look at all extraterrestrials and say, if they're flying around and they're not showing themselves and they're trying to why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that because they don't want you to know who they are. The good ETs are opposite. They do want you to know. And then they don't ever want you to say, you never tried. It's like a guy and a girl. And then the girl finally months later says, why did you never let me become your girlfriend? And the guy could say, you never did anything to make me think. You never tried. You never tried to become my girlfriend. We haven't even gone out to dinner. I mean, I asked you 20 times and you didn't say anything. So how can you blame me? So the good ETs are like that. They're saying, we've been trying. You just never accepted the invitation. But the bad ETs are doing all of the control to sort of squash that. And eventually I'll talk to you about the 3-eye atlas and show you how that sort of fits into the same pattern.
Yeah, definitely, because I want to get into those thing that you referred to as Psyops, and that seems to fit into that category. But before we get there, just on the note of the communication with the good ETs, I'd like to know a little bit more about that and the messages that they've been sending through you and what their intentions are. And primarily, I know that your communications with them are telepathic, but is that the only method of communication with them? Is there any physical interaction, physical manifestation, or is the appeal that they're making to the general public that everybody needs to develop this telepathic means of communication in order to, get in touch with them?
Yes. The basic issue is the entire galaxy communicates telepathically, and we're the odd man out, this planet. And the reason is it's a prison planet. Everybody is supposed to speak telepathically, and it's normal. And the ETs have no trouble, interspecies, it doesn't matter, explaining anything you want to explain telepathically. They do not use, Rob, listen, this is important. Let your whole audience know. They do not use English. They do not use English. They speak
I thought
telepathic
everybody uses English. What's that about?
or any other verbal language. They speak telepathically. This was discovered originally by Soviet cosmonauts, and it was published in in a DIA publication. And I can get you the DIA publication, but the cosmonauts found out that they can communicate telepathically in orbit, but they can't communicate telepathically on the surface of the planet. Meaning, in orbit they can communicate among themselves, but then they come down. So on this planet there is a psi suppression field. In addition to that, this is a prison. A prison works because it keeps people inside the prison. You can't get outside the prison. Like former Soviet Union, you couldn't escape. Mikhail Baryshnikov, Rudolf Nureyev, ballet dancers, they had to flee at an airport as they were being led by their handlers back into the jets. They had to flee and run into the grips of people in Paris or wherever and say, I'm claiming asylum, save me. You know, the Soviet Union, they kept people in. China under Mao kept people in, couldn't leave. That was how prisons normally work. But how do they work here? They work because when you die, no one ever dies. We are all Isbis that operate physical bodies. Isbis is an immortal spiritual being. You can call it a soul or spirit. There's a lot of religious baggage that comes along with that. But the Isbis, they are there, and that's who you really are. And so after death, the Isbi pops out, and you heard this 1,000 times, 1,000,000,000 times. You see the light. You're drawn to the light. That light is tech. It's technology. It draws every Isbi in, and then you're zapped with an electric bolt that's way more voltage than lightning. And then an AI comes out that looks like a person and says, we've been talking about your case with the Council of Elders. You're a really important person. See, the Council of Elders are right over there. Ah, yes. And so the Council of Elders think that the problems you've had with remember the argument you had with your grandmother and your daughter, remember that? Your father, you had sort of a dispute with. We think you should go back and work on a couple of these personality issues, but it's up to you. It's free will. Now, with no memory, because you've been zapped, the zap eliminates their telepathic capabilities. The zap eliminates your remote viewing capabilities. With none of that, and you just say a good suggestion by the Council of Elders to go back and work on a few personality issues. Everybody says yes, and they get flushed back into the system. That's how you keep it. Eventually, I hope on this interview you ask why the bad ETs want this system and why they want so many people to be recycled and why are they keeping the prison? What do they need these people for? Trust me, they don't want the gold or the oil. They want the people. Why do they want these people? So I can explain that fully at some point if you ask me about that.
Well, let's get into that. Let's get into that right now if you want to.
All right. The bad ETs are a fascist, authoritarian, totalitarian group. They run this place as a prison. This is the last bastion of a war that took place in the galaxy that spanned like 1,000,000 years. It was a terrible war. It was basically a free will side versus an authoritarian, totalitarian side. The war is basically over. It's done. But this area of the galaxy is the last bastion of the totalitarian war type side, the authoritarian side, and they have a prison here that is very valuable to them because of the number of Isbis in it. Isbis, immortal spiritual beings, you cannot kill an Isbi. Nobody dies. Nobody can die. To my understanding, no one in the universe has ever figured out how to kill an Isbi. However, you can capture an Isbi, you can trick an Isbi, you can lie to an Isbi, you can enslave an Isbi, you can do all manner of bad stuff to an Isbi. You just can't kill an Isbi. Well, if you're going to expand, let's put two and two together. If you're going to expand, what do totalitarian fascist regimes believe? They believe that unless they expand and grow, they're going to be weak and they're going to be attacked eventually. So they grow like the Nazis. They just kept expanding and expanding and expanding. Even going to sort of semi-authoritarian or authoritarian rooms like Napoleon Bonaparte, he kept on expanding. So what's the authoritarian side wants is to expand. Now, you can't take your available resources and expand across the whole galaxy. Let's say you have 12 guys, all right, 12 guys, and you say, I want to go out and conquer the galaxy. Okay, fine, good, go ahead and try. Where are they going to go? There's 12 guys. They're going to go to 12 different planets and each person knock off a planet. I mean, like, what are you going to do? So you have to have people. If you're going to invade the galaxy, you need billions and billions of ISBs. And you need them not just for the soldiers, you're going to need them for soldiers. And it's great that you can't kill an ISB, because if you go them out, if you send them out as a mercenary force to shoot and they get killed, well, you just take the ISB, put it back into another body and send it back out again. All this stuff is being kept from humanity. But at one point, everybody knew and understood this stuff. So you need them for soldiers, but then you also need them for the prostitutes to service those soldiers. And you need them for the tradespeople to service the commerce for that. And then when you go and you conquer all these lands, you need billions and billions of people on your side to fill those lands up, because they're currently occupied by other people, by other groups that have their own way of living. And if you're gonna occupy them, if you're gonna conquer them, you've got to go in with people. You need billions. And now let's say there's 8 billion physical humans on the planet. Well, how many billions are an ISB form waiting for the recycling process? You know, what do you got? 30, 40, 50 billion people total that are in this prison? That's a huge resource. And for a group that wants to go out and expand into the galaxy, that needs the mercenary, they need the army, they need the prostitutes, they need the tradespeople, they need the bureaucrats, they need everything. They need every single one of those ISBs. They can't expand without it. That's the whole purpose. The good ETs, having seen what happens in the future where that possibility actually manifests, says, what? This is crazy. And they traced it back to say, where's the locus where all of this, if the spot where if this didn't happen, then that Holocaust that was worse than the first Holocaust that hit the galaxy that lasted for a million years, where is the locus for the beginning of this second Holocaust, which is even worse than the first one? And they traced it back and they said, it's this place. What's it called? Earth? And they said, holy Moses, they got, 40 billion ISBs ready to go out to march across the entire galaxy? Oh, Lord, have mercy. It's a prison. They have a prison population they're going to use to invade all of us. So the goal came, the good ETs, the goal became, we got to break this prison planet out. It's hard. Now, in the solar system right now, the good ETs have flooded this place with resources. They have way more military capabilities than the bad ETs. They are really, but they are free will ETs. They do not want, they cannot invade and just knock off the bad ETs. Because the bad ETs wouldn't give a second's thought about destroying the entire planet. Blow it up, so what? They can just scoop up all the ISBs, go take them to another planet and start over again. And this planet, it's easy to blow up a planet. For people who say, oh, you can't blow up a planet, bull. You can blow up Earth in a heartbeat, just with nuclear weapons. For example, Earth is an 8,000 mile diameter ball of liquid molten rock, and it has an 8-mile thin crust on top. It's a balloon. You just take a number of atomic weapons, just not that many, maybe 100 atomic weapons like Scandia Labs or some other place, and detonate them all at once. You're going to have a huge hole. You're going to pop the balloon, the whole planet will go. It's not hard to blow up a planet, and the ETs on both sides have capabilities of doing that, Star Wars type of thing in a heartbeat. Believe me, they have, neither one is disadvantaged on the part of weapons. It's not like one side has better weapons than the other. There's no secrets. They all know all the weapons.
Does this account for the interest in our nuclear weapons on the part of the ETs? Is that this like one of the critical things that they're monitoring because it could be leveraged for bad and has the potential to destroy the entire planet? Is that why ETs seem to be taking such an interest?
Both the good ETs and the bad ETs do not want the nuclear weapons to be used. The bad ETs obviously don't want it because this is their resource. This is their prison. This is their population. They don't want the planet to blow up or anything. And the good ETs don't want it to blow up either. So neither side of the ETs want the planet to be nuked.
Mm-hmm.
It's both. The sides are very distinct, but almost everybody's contact with the extraterrestrials except for a few major times, such as when the drones came out and when we're trying to show the ETs are really, really, really trying, the good ones are really trying to get people to see that they want to talk. They want all the secrecy to go. They want to talk. They want to answer all of the questions, but they can't. They can't. They don't control the population. They don't control the. They don't control the political people. They don't control the national leaders. They don't control the media controllers. Look, I mean, look at how we're being shadow banned on YouTube and Google. They can't control that. They're free will ETs, but they can do things to subtly change the population. They were involved heavily in inserting ideas into Hollywood, for example, into the minds of the script writers in the middle of the night when they were sleeping, so that they would wake up in the morning and come up with a brand new idea for a new movie, a new TV show. They are free will ETs. They couldn't force them to do it, but they dropped the idea in, and then the scriptwriter wakes up and says, "Oh, I've got this great idea for a new idea." That's where Star Wars came out. That's where Star Trek came out. That's where the Matrix movies came out. Even other countries, the Ghost in the Shell, that's where all that stuff came out. The good ETs are dropping these ideas in the middle of the night for people to get, and then the people have to do something with them of their own free will if they want. So the planet has been adjusted in terms of the masses to be ready for this moment. And the bad ETs didn't want any of that to happen. But, that's the struggle. That's the war that's going on.
For the average person who is just going to work, coming home, watching TV, just worried about their groceries and their car and their house and all of these things, is there anything that those people are doing to serve the bad ETs unconsciously without realizing it? And how can people stop themselves from doing that if that's the case?
Absolutely. They're doing everything the bad ETs want. They're being passive. That's exactly what they want. They're being passive. And this extends even to the way the cultures are being drawn into in our society. I'm going to extend something out. This is not something that the ETs have told me. This is just my own personal observation, and it sort of fits the pattern. People have stopped interacting in real and concrete ways. Men are no longer men in the United States. For example, if you look at the testosterone levels over the last 20 years, they've been dropping precipitously, and you can't tell me that that's just an accident, historical accident. And it's environmental. It's totally environmental. The testosterone levels for men are like down into the 400s for people that should be into the 6, 7, 800s. It's like, and that's for kids that are like in their 20s and 30s. And it is totally environmental. I, for example, I'm very aware of all of this, and I stay away from anything dealing with the stuff that control that type of stuff. I make sure I nothing affects my body like that, because I have to be able to operate with the EDs, and they help me
in terms of nutrition and things like
yeah,
that.
they guide me. They tell me what I can and can't do and things like that. I'm a vegetarian. I'm not supposed to eat meat. I mean, they guide me in terms of things like that. I can't use any of the medical facilities on the ships. I've been on the ships countless times. I am not allowed to. They won't let me step into the machines that fix everything, but they give me guidance that I had to be born as a human with a human mother. I had to go through the human educational system and everything, but I've had contacts with them throughout my whole life, and I did not go through the so-called death traps where you get zapped, and so I don't have any of that experience. But like my testosterone level is, I do have it checked just to see. My aging rate has been cut in half of the normal aging rate. So I'm 73. Do I look like a 73-year-old? Do I act like a 73-year-old? Do I sound like a 73-year-old? I'm going around doing everything that a normal 30-year-old would do. And the issue is that my testosterone level, for example, I use that as a check of my aging rate, because at the age of 40, testosterone starts dropping at 1% every year, until it's like when you're 70 years old, it's around 250, 300 or something like that. So my testosterone level, you can actually see what my aging rate is by looking at that. It's 979. Now and that's as of like some months ago, not years ago, just a couple of months ago. So the maximum, the range for testosterone for a 20-year-old to 39-year-old male starts at around like 300 and something like that, and it goes up to around almost 900. Okay, mine is higher than the absolute top range for a normal 19 to 39-year-old male. And that's and they develop those statistics based on what they actually see. So the issue is it's just with the environmental stuff. So I can't believe that the demasculinization of people across the world is, and you can see it in the United States clearly with the numbers, is a coincidence with everything else, because men are supposed to fight. Men are supposed to be the warriors. We're supposed to be the ones that are challenging everything. But if you take the testosterone away from the men, they're not men anymore, not the way they should be. And if you look at the dating situation, dating is basically stopped. 53% of all marriages end in divorce, and 20 to 22% of the marriages have the couples actually going to individually to lawyers to see if they can afford a divorce, but they decide they can't afford a divorce, so they stay in the marriage. So that means if you add the 22% to the 53, you get 75% of all marriages are a total failure. And then what you get is the dating situation is simply stopped. Now, men don't stop chasing women under normal circumstances. You can't have that happen. But if you cut down the testosterone so they don't care anymore, yeah, it'll happen. And then you have a situation where the women are ferociously upset, if you look at YouTube relationship videos, that the men aren't chasing them anymore. And the men are actually saying, "No, we're good. We're good." But like biologically, that's impossible if the testosterone levels are there. But if the testosterone levels were up, you'd have a lot more of a confrontational male situation with regard to things that we're talking about right now. So if you castrate the males, you're going to get a passive situation. And that's what you do. In fact, in people who have hair transplants, you can have hair taken from the back of your head and put it in the top, like transplanting trees, okay? But it looks like crap, because what you need to do is you have to have the bushes as well. So you have to take a medicine. There's two medicines they gave. You have to take a medicine that actually shuts down the testosterone creation, because the testosterone is the thing that actually kills the hair follicles on the top of men's heads. So if you kill the testosterone, then those follicles can start growing again, and they fill in the bushes and the hair looks great. I knew one guy, this is amazing. He desperately wanted to get a girlfriend, and he was young. He was like 30, 25, 30. He was older than 25, almost 30, I guess. He desperately wanted to get a girlfriend, but he had male pattern baldness. And so he went and got a hair transplant. And then he started to taking the Propecia medicine that cuts off the testosterone stuff. And the hair looked gorgeous. I mean, he was rock star gorgeous. And it worked. The girls really wanted to date him. And then he found out that he felt disgusted, his words, when he was in bed with a naked lady. What good was it? He had the hair, he could attract the lady, and he thought she was disgusting. And that's what he did the whole transplant for. If you take away the testosterone, that's what you get. So the point is, this entire process is so complicated. It's not just extraterrestrials trying to communicate. It's not just psyops happening to try to confuse people. It's not just chaos, but there's chemical stuff. And I haven't even touched the drugs. Do you think the drugs is an accident? The one country you want to anesthetize more than any other is the United States. The drug infiltration into this country, let alone the whole planet, but it's all over the planet, is just deafening. Everybody smokes weed. Everybody, and so many people are doing fentanyl and other things, but just weed alone. It's hard to find a young person who doesn't smoke weed. It's hard to find one that you can talk to that doesn't smoke weed. And if you look at the weed now, a lot of it is being grown in farms up in Maine and other places like that. Actually, Chinese run farms. And there's a very solid argument that the Chinese are very actively pursuing killing off the American population in terms of their fighting this and stuff like that. by producing the weed. And the weed that people buy is filled with all types of bad stuff, herbicides, pesticides, all types of stuff, poisons of all types, and they just smoke it and think, it's okay. But then they're finding all types of diseases happening. There's many ways to attack a country. But one of the things about the weed is it dulls you down. Instead of objecting and going out on the streets and fighting, you take your blunt at the end of the day, puff on it, chill out. I've seen that happen so often. It's hard. It's hard to find any young people that don't do that. And every time they do that, I say, it's like castrating. They're castrating themselves at the same time they're anesthetizing themselves with drugs. If they didn't take that, they'd be rioting in the street with what's going on right now. And so the good ETs are in a situation of saying, how do we wake this place up? It's like, it's not just a prison, it's like a mental hospital where everybody's on drugs.
When you mentioned drugs at first, the first thing that came to my mind was pharmaceutical drugs, which is another huge issue because, to my knowledge, the United States is the country with one of the highest uses of pharmaceutical drugs per person and also has one of the lower life expectancies in the world. So what does that tell you?
Hey, look, when they do with rats, snakes, and spiders, what I do with my body in order to cut the aging rate in half. Remember, I'm not using any ET tech. Don't get me wrong here. I've asked for it. They don't allow me to do that, but they allow me to do whatever. They give me advice, and I'm allowed to do whatever I can do here. So one of the things I had to do was cut down my calorie intake to 1/2 of the normal calorie intake and not die. So in addition to reducing my caloric intake to 1/2 of the normal, I have to super supplement to make sure I'm not missing anything. And then I have to go into a doctor once a year and get absolutely every nutrient checked to make sure I'm not deficient in anything like that. But when they do the same things to rats, for example, they find out that a rat that's a human equivalent of 110, 120 years old is still chasing their lady rats all over the place. It's still active, like at a human equivalent of 110 years old. And I can guarantee you, I'm still chasing the lady rats.
That's good to hear.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So we teased a little bit about this 3-eye atlas that everybody is talking about right now, and you've said that straight out that this is a psyop. It's a distraction. It's been getting a lot of press. I've been seeing a lot of videos about it, and people like Avi Loeb and other high profile personalities have been talking about it and speculating that it could have some connection to intelligent it could be intelligently controlled. There could be an ET presence associated with it. Tell me what you know about it. I know you said FARSIGHT hasn't remote viewed 3-eye atlas specifically, but what can you tell me about it? What are your thoughts?
We don't know any concrete information about it, and we've not done any remote viewing on it. And it could have extraterrestrial. The extraterrestrials are so common out there. It could have extraterrestrial stuff. It's almost impossible for it not to have extraterrestrial stuff in it. But it's acting like a psyops, and it's acting just like Hale-Bopp, the Hale-Bopp comet that came in. And that was really interesting. Let me explain what happened with the Hale-Bopp thing. And it was one of the most wonderful experiences that I had because I was the victim of a psyops at that time when it happened. So there was a guy I knew personally, Chuck Schrammick. He was a newscaster in Houston. He was also an amateur astronomer. He took some pictures of Hale-Bopp, the comet, and there was an anomaly. He had 100 pictures, but he posted one on the web. There was an anomaly, like a light right next to Hale-Bopp, in the straight line of sight. And he said, "What is that?" We did some remote viewing on that, and it turned out to be like a portal. And there were ships coming in and out, so things. I was supposed to be on the Art Bell show, late night radio show that night when the results came in. I said, this is a perfect opportunity to talk about this stuff. So I did on the Art Bell show. It caused a sensation of sensations. Military intel people had been planning on a psyops against us to dampen us down, and it was going to be health related, saying, remote viewing is damaging to your health or something like that. And that's what but when this Hale-Bopp thing came up, they switched, they pivoted, and they said, no, this is too good. This is really great. So they had one of their people actually communicate with one of our people who worked on our web stuff, and convince her that he was in connection with the astronomers that had real photographs of this anomaly. And they sent us these things. They sent us 3 rolls of film. 2 turned out to be blank, and one of them had a few images, like 5 images on it. We developed them at Wolf Camera, and we looked at them and said, "That's weird." Art Bell calls me up and says, "Courtney, Chuck Schrammick, good Chuck Schrammick, good friend, he's having a terrible time. And he had to leave Houston because he's being so harassed, and he had to go to Florida. You got to help him, Courtney. You got to help him. Come and talk to us about these images that you got sent by this major astronomer." And I said, "Well, Art, A, I don't know the astronomer. B, I don't even know anything about them other than they sent us, and I'm not even sure. We didn't use those things for anything." And he said, "Courtney, you got to help Chuck." I said, "Well, what are we supposed to do? They're not ours." And he said, "Well, just talk anecdotally about them, and it'll just help Chuck." And I said, "Okay, I guess we could," because I wanted to please him, because I wanted to get back on his radio show, get publicity for what we do at FARSIGHT and things like that. So I said, "Okay." That was a mistake number 1. So I said, "Okay," but I made a verbal agreement with him that he would never publish those images. We sent him 1. He would never publish because they weren't our images. We didn't have the copyright. We don't publish anything that we don't create. And he said, "Absolutely, no problem." So I talked about it. Then there was another show that happened where the lady who got the images and somebody else, a big name, was on the show, and they talked about, this thing. And then it morphed after that into a UFO that was following Hale-Bopp. We never said it was following Hale-Bopp, but in the line of sight in Chuck Schrammick's image, you could see it. There was something was there, and we called it like a portal because things seemed to be coming in and out. And then Art Bell announced that he was going to release the photos that Courtney Brown submitted. I said, "Well, I didn't submit anything. These are supposed to be, I don't have the copyright." So he announced, and then on like July 12th or something, early July, he releases them. Within 24 hours, 2 major astronomers from the University of Hawaii contacted him and said, "They're ours, and they were stolen from our website." We didn't even know there was, those images, you could even, that such images or anything were on anybody's website. Art Bell then said, and he checked it himself. He himself held them up, our image and the ones from the website that he got from the astronomers, and they just seemed like they matched. Well, I later tried to do the same thing, and they didn't match. They were close, but they didn't match. And then I said, how do like major astronomers, do they watch the Art Bell show? Do they listen at night? Is that what they do at night when they're watching the stars? How did they know within 24 hours that? And then Chuck Schrammick told me that he said that, I don't know who the astronomers were, but after he posted his one image on the web, one of the biggest astronomers on the planet Earth, famous, called him up on his phone. Now, Chuck was a newscaster. He didn't tell me who the astronomer is, so I don't know if it's the same astronomers in Hawaii or wherever, but I don't know who they were. But it was a famous I'm sorry, not Hawaii. It was a famous astronomer. That's all Chuck Schrammick told me, just a famous astronomer. He called him up and said, he was irate. He said, "You have to take this down. Take down that image." And Chuck said, "First of all, my phone is unlisted. How did you get it? I'm a newscaster. I don't want anyone to be able to find my phone number." So the guy found his phone number. Like, how did he get the phone number in the first place? And like, why is one of the biggest astronomers calling up a hobbyist, telling him to take down an image that he put on the web? Like, what? Who am I? Mm-hmm. And the guy called twice because he didn't take down the photograph. So the guy called again a few days later. "Why haven't you taken it down?" And the guy was irate. So that sort of says, like, what's going on? Anyway, so, and then after that, on the Art Bell show, the whole story evolved into a UFO following Hale-Bopp. First of all, a UFO doesn't follow a comet. A UFO can cross the solar system in the blink of an eye. They don't use like gravitational forces like human spacecraft, where you actually have to orbit something and follow it. They don't do that. Anyway, but he said, Art Bell was saying that it was following, and then they had a military remote viewer who I thought was scandalous, say that it was a UFO following Hale-Bopp, and it was carrying a plant pathogen weapon, and that it would be dropped on. I'm not telling you anything that you can't confirm on Google. So
Hmm.
that the weapon was going to be dropped on Africa and it was going to wipe out all land, all life on Africa. And if you wanted to find the safe zones, you can buy my remote viewing kit for, I think it was $55 or something. Anyway,
Okay.
it sold like,
Nice
and then
business
Art Bell
venture.
kept on promoting that remote viewer and so-called remote viewer, and and the guy kept, he was selling lots of his remote viewing kits, and then in the middle of March, I believe it was March, 1997. Something happened. I don't think the Intel people were involved in this. I think they just fell into their lap. There was a group of eunuchs. I think they called themselves Heaven's Gate. And there was a group of eunuchs, and they cut their balls off like years. They were sick puppies. And they all killed themselves with I think it was a poison. They all killed themselves. Now, they never linked to our website and they never emailed us. But, anyway, immediately after that, Art Bell gets on a major news thing and say the only person who ever said there was a UFO following Hale-Bopp was Courtney Brown. I mean, there was just lying through their teeth going on afterwards, and then and with regard to what happened to us, it was a huge storm where there's sound and fury. Now we actually, because we were actually, I think partially because we started to get actual physical ET contacts at that time. I think the military people were curious about it. They didn't understand why it was happening. They were getting recordings of everything that was going on, so they knew it was real. And I think because of that, they held back, sort of immediately snuffing us out. But one of their intel people was so upset and so was affected by what he saw happen, he broke off and he actually contacted us, gave us absolute proof positive of who he was. He gave us a written transcript of a very sensitive phone conversation that we had, and with Art Bell. And he gave us a transcript of it, meaning he would clearly had access to the bugs and all of the
Yeah.
FARSIGHT stuff. And then he told us what happened. He told us that the original plan was to get us attacked and knocked down by health concerns, but the Hale-Bopp thing seemed too great, so they used that. Took just a few clicks of the mouse to get all the connections. They got images shipped to another professor somewhere else, and that was the one who contacted the person at FARSIGHT. And the goal was to have us use those things for targeting and then have the pictures discredited. We never used them for targeting. That didn't work for them. But what they did do is they said they did a personality profile of people at FARSIGHT, and they thought that the female that they sent the picture to would crack under the pressure and release the name of the person that sent them. He was a professor. Turned out the professor had no contact with anything dealing with astronomy. He was a professor at a major university, but nothing dealing with astronomy. He lied through his teeth. Anyway, so that was the idea, that she would crack. But I really held firm. I said, no, we have an agreement. We're not publishing anything. Any names will be sued, whatever. So that didn't work for them because she didn't release the name of the person or the university of the person. So that didn't work. But the hubbub, the furor, Art Bell screaming on the airwaves did two things. It told us that we can't defend ourselves if we don't have control of the mic, which is why you have FarsightPrime.com, our streaming service. That's why it's a whole remote viewing movie venue that's bigger. It's like Disney, it's like Paramount Plus, it's Hulu, it's like everything, dealing with hundreds and hundreds of projects dealing with the remote viewing. You can see everything. That's where that all came about, because we needed to be able to control the mic. But the other thing is it taught me about psyops, how psyops are actually done. I learned so much. It was extremely painful, Rob, but pain is sometimes a good thing. I never would have wanted to have missed that. I learned so much. And the intel person that came to us and told us everything that happened, that was like that was like a $1 million gift to be told have it explained how it actually worked. So they wanted us to be discredited just by having a lot of people shouting. But in fact, we didn't do anything. We didn't use the pictures for anything. We kept to our word. We didn't publish those things. And we never said there was a UFO following Hale-Bopp. UFOs don't follow a comet. If they want to cross the sky or across the planet, they can get here across the whole galaxy in just a short amount of time. They're not going to slowly, like an American spacecraft, follow something. Anyway, so let's go to 3I Atlas.
Right.
With that background, I'm looking at what 3I Atlas is. A, it's a comet. What? And then we have major scientific personnel coming out of Harvard. We have Michio Kaku and we have Avi Loeb screaming, this is serious. It has evidence of this could be something. And they're sort of alluding this could be bigger and bigger. And there's evidence that there's there's an attempt to sort of like the communications when it passed by Mars with the satellites, our own satellites, suddenly the communications stopped, indicating that, we weren't getting any telemetry back no images back from this 3I Atlas. Something's going on here, but it may pass into it looks like Hale-Bopp all over again. It looks like what Art Bell was saying, like Hail Mary. He called it the Hail Mary, the Hale-Bopp thing, like increasing the panic, increasing the stuff, increasing now, Rob, this is the thing that really tells me this is nuts. FARSIGHT was the one that pioneered showing people. Remember, the good ETs want everything out in public. We showed people how to take video recordings on demand any day you want in the middle of the day of UFOs right over your own head using infrared. We showed how to get the cameras and we showed how to make it infrared. And then 120 frames per second, and then how to process it in Adobe Premiere, for example. It's on our website, farsight.org, that website. In the introduction section, there's all the technical specs, which camera, how to get it converted to IR, how to actually shoot it at 120 frames per second, what LUTs to apply in order to be able to see these. The first time I did it, this whole process was told to us by the lead air traffic controller of the big Washington International Airport. He came to us on his own ticket. He bought his own ticket. He came to us in this very room I'm talking to now with all the monitors around. He came with Excel spreadsheets. He came with video examples. He told us what camera to use, what company to send it to get it converted to IR. So I'm not a genius, and we figured this all out. But somehow he was brought to us. He also took one of our courses and taught by Intisam, one of our remote viewers on remote viewing. So he was clearly getting involved in all of our stuff. And then he came and he showed us all of this stuff. And then we published everything and we gave examples and we gave lots of examples. So many examples, it got to be boring for us to take it. The very first time I did it on the deck on the back of my house, pointing up, wondering if this will work. In 15 minutes, we had 30 UFOs flying overhead. So one of them was huge. It covered the whole sky. It was like, I'm looking at what? Everything's invisible. You can't see anything with your physical eyes. Nothing. They're all using stealth tech. But you shift it to IR, infrared, and you shift it to 120 frames per second. And then the air traffic control guy, Lincoln Lounsbury, he was kind enough to do all the numerical stuff for us. He told us the speed that the crafts were speaking. He's the lead air traffic control person, or he was. He's retired now. For the entire the entire Washington International Airport. So he was the one. He's the expert of experts to be able to tell us what the speeds were. And he was saying there's ones that we're recording. They were 20,000 miles an hour, which is 32,000 kilometers an hour. You could have the whole Titanic fly over your head, over your house at 20,000 miles an hour. You're not going to see anything. So they do stealth tech to do this. Anyway, I started recording and then I started posting them. And then he said, and then the same guy, Lincoln Lounsbury, he told me, the UFOs, they really like air shows. Why don't you go do an air show? So I didn't know all this stuff. So I went down to the Pensacola Naval Air Base during a Blue Angels air show, and I recorded in infrared. I didn't see anything. I just looked like a nice day, and I saw the Blue Angels flying around. And then I went back and I processed it. I slowed it down so I could see what was going on, and I used LUT so I could see what was going on with the infrared. There was like hundreds of UFOs, hundreds, and and then I started to publish them on my Instagram page so people could see them for free. So if you go to my Instagram page, Courtney Brown FARSIGHT, no spaces, all one word, Courtney Brown FARSIGHT, you can see examples, and you can see, in fact, the one where I have 4 Blue Angels jets flying on a UFO, zooming right past him, and I follow the UFO. I mean, it's as clear as day. That has like hundreds of thousands of views on it just for people looking at these things. And we showed people how to do that. Now, Rob, if we can tell people how to make pictures of the extraterrestrial spacecraft over their own house, why the heck are we looking at a stupid comet? Why do you have Michio Kaku and Avi Loeb talking about 3-eye Atlas when all they need to do is put a camera on their deck and point it up and you'll see all the UFOs you want to see?
Mm.
What? I don't trust anything coming out of Harvard. Harvard is not good as far as I'm concerned. They were the ones who ran an academic crusade against John Mack when he published the book Abduction. He was the founder of his department of psychiatry at Harvard, at Harvard's hospital. He was the Pulitzer Prize winning author of the biography of Lawrence of Arabia, D. Lawrence. He was John Mack, the great Harvard professor, and he did Abduction, and that was too much. They put him through an academic inquisition where they were trying to remove his tenure from this guy for just publishing a book. It got so bad that on a phone conversation I had with him, he asked me if I knew any donors that could help pay for his legal expenses. Now, finally, basically because Alan Dershowitz wrote an article in the local Cambridge paper that basically said he's being his rights of tenure, his rights for free speech are being violated, everything's being violated. Like a week later, the dean closed the book and said, John Mack can do whatever he wants. The case is over. We're not trying to get rid of him anymore. But they tried to get rid of him. And then David M. Jacobs, the professor at Temple University, he was never promoted to full professor. He was kept as an associate professor. I myself have not been. I myself have been denied promotion to a full professor as well. And so it affects academia. And I'm a professor at a major university, but I don't do any of the stuff we're talking about now at my university. There I teach nonlinear math courses. I teach modeling courses in a social science program. I teach statistics, things like that, elections and voting. That's what I teach there. Mm-hmm. But I am the last academic on the planet Earth standing that deals with anything. I don't do it at the university, but even outside the university, I'm the last academic standing that talks about this subject. You know how many academics there are on the entire planet? Zillions. How is it possible that you can have congressional hearings with David Grush coming out of the Pentagon with Pentagon clearance to spill the beans about the crashed UFOs and the crash retrieval program and the non-human biologics? How can you have congressional hearings about that and not have a single academic stand up and want to say, I'd like to teach a course on that subject?
Yeah.
What? How is it possible? You're not talking 10 academics. You're talking hundreds of thousands of academics, and not one is willing to stand up and talk about something that they can have congressional hearings on. You can't tell me the control isn't deep. It's deep. And they use fear and intimidation to stop things from coming out. So when I see people like Michio Kaku and Avi Loeb coming out and talking about 3-eye Atlas, which really looks an awful lot like Hale-Bopp, a comet flying through the flying through the skies, I say to myself, I remember John Mack. What happened to him? And I remember everything else. And I say, can you tell me that a major astronomer at Harvard who spends his whole life looking at the skies can't have any evidence of UFOs flying over his own house, but has to look for a comet, when Courtney Brown, a professor at another university, can take his own camera and put it on his deck and get 30 UFOs in 15 minutes. Are you telling me that that Harvard astronomer really doesn't know that that can be done? And he spends his life looking up at the skies? Only two things in terms of my personal opinion. It's either he's lying or he's stupid. That's all I can say, in my personal opinion. And it could be that he's just stupid, or it could be that he's lying. And I don't know which one is which. But I personally think that it's strange. How can you have him talking about the comets when the UFOs are just all over the place? And you can see them and record them with your own cameras with the right equipment. And it's perfectly legal for one academic to call another academic stupid. I'm sure that's what they're going to be calling me. So they're going to call me deluded or stupid. So what? Let the mud fly in both directions.
What I am thinking about when I see stories like 3i Atlas is I'm reminded of all the times that we've heard from different people that a staged alien invasion is in the plans. Stephen Greer has said it many times. He's been saying it for a long time. Jeremy Corbell has teased it, and he gave a date of 2027 as when the planned alleged alien invasion is supposed to be staged. And when I hear stories like 3i Atlas going, like, touching kind of the mainstream, it feels like that's sort of an attempt to prepare the public for something like that, which may be happening down the road not too far. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's very strange. By the way, when you mentioned those people, one of the things you should understand that there's a tremendous amount of credential fraud in the UFO community. Now, I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to get any lawsuits or anything like that. But when someone says they're a doctor, a medical doctor or something like that, and you go to the doctor's office, what do they have? You go to the office, they have their diplomas all plastered on the walls. They show their credentials, they stuff like that. They're working at hospitals. So when someone says they have a degree and they're like a doctor, don't just say yes. I have seen guys tell me that they were in the Philadelphia experiment and they were Dr. So-and-so. And like, there's no evidence that the person even went to college. One of the people that I used to interact with, and I learned this early on, told me that this person told me that I'll use they instead, so I don't give away he or she, that they were ABD in physics. That's all but dissertation, and that they were basically not allowed to complete their work because of their association with FARSIGHT and things like that. And it really affected their graduate work, but they had advanced training. And it turned out the person never graduated from community college. They had no background at all, nothing, no college at all. So when you see somebody, I don't care how big they are, saying that they are doctor this or doctor that, or they went to medical school, one of the things that you should start to say is, how come they racked up hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt in medical school, spent a couple years maybe working someplace, and then immediately stopped and went around chasing UFOs? Like, what money is there in the UFO community? How can you pay your rent? How can you pay your mortgage? Who's funding them? Where's the money coming from? And like, I've never met somebody who went to medical school that didn't work decades on paying off the debt. And it was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, what? I see that. And so if you ever see anybody say they're doctor this or doctor that, just say, that's great. I'm really glad to hear about that. Can I see your diploma? Can I did it really happen? And people in the New Age community, they just accept anything and the person becomes a big name. I've seen a remote viewer, military person, I won't give any names, who got out of the military, had essentially no major college. But then 2 weeks later told me on the phone that he was in a graduate program going to get a PhD. I said, oh, that's great. I'm so proud of you. That's wonderful. Called him back 2 weeks later. He had his degree. I said, what? It took me like many years to get my PhD. I had got my PhD at Washington University. I gave the university's name. I worked for, I wrote a dissertation. The dissertation alone took me a year. What do you mean you
Mhm.
got it in 2 weeks? What about going to classes? What happened? And he said, oh, no, they gave me credit for my life experience as the military and gave me. Well, it turned out that the degree that they got was from some guy in the bayou who had a computer and a printer and printed out a degree. And the guy sent him some money and he sent him back a degree. And then he's, to this day, he still runs around saying, having people call him Dr. So-and-so. What? So there is so much crap that's out there. You can't tell what's right or what's wrong. And so,
Yeah.
in one respect, in one side, I respect people like Avi Loeb for at least talking about Oumuamua and Three Eye Atlas. And I respect the fact that he's at least, but on the other hand, I'm saying, why is he getting so much press? Like, why is he out there everywhere? And why isn't he talking about the obvious UFOs that are absolutely everywhere? And I personally find difficult to believe that he doesn't know about that since he spends his whole life looking at the sky.
It's
Has
a
he
valid
never looked?
question.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's just has he never looked at an infrared camera's vision of the sky? I mean, they have telescopes worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're telling me they never looked at an in an image, and at IR videos of the sky? With all, it's just, and then now and then chasing Three Eye Atlas and Oumuamua. I said, now I'm not saying that the stuff with Three Eye Atlas and Oumuamua is not correct, but it's just like, why? It just doesn't make sense
It gets a
for all this,
disproportional amount of emphasis in the public discourse is
especially
basically
in the
what.
direction of fear and worry. And that's exactly what the bad ETs want. And then when I see these people come out and I say, well, the elite, they're not going to let that stuff come out unless they want it to come out. They suppress information like that. So the very fact that you get people like Michio Kaku and Avi Loeb talking about this stuff on the mainstream, I say, wow, somebody's letting them talk about this. So it sort of fits into that pattern because the good ETs have a hell of a time getting access to the media. Really difficult time. The reason Farsight exists is because we've been helped. One side of the military, I sort of split the military in half. I don't know what is right, but if you look at David Grush, for example, he has a full security clearance with the Pentagon. And while working at the Pentagon with his security clearance, he did the congressional hearings. And he never said anything that wasn't authorized by the Pentagon in his office to say about the crashed ships, the non-human biologics, the whole thing. Down the hall in the Pentagon is the other side that says, oh, we don't have any evidence of that. There's no ETs, there's no ships, there's no nothing. So clearly, there are two sides in the Pentagon. It's not a uniform body. And one side wants disclosure and gives permission for David Grush to talk. And the other side is saying, we don't know anything about it. It's all junk. So clearly, that's going on. So we exist at Farsight because the side that wants this, somebody's protecting us. Because trust me, the military could snuff us out in a heartbeat. I saw that with the Hale-Bopp thing. It wasn't because I was super good at figuring out how to defeat them. No, they made the decision. Let's just let this Courtney Brown Farsight thing go. We're not going to crush it completely. We were curious to them, but now it seems that they're actively, somebody out there is actively protecting us, and they're probably protecting us because they know that we have actual physical contact with the so-called good ETs, and that's a curiosity to them. The one side of the Pentagon definitely wants disclosure. I can tell you that much. One side definitely wants this whole charade to end. They don't like what the other side is doing. The other side feels just the opposite. You see, the agreements are that the ETs can actually, the bad ETs can do their experiments. They call them experiments, but it's actually a huge human trafficking operation with genetic stuff, and it's another whole story. And in exchange, they give that side of the Pentagon tech. It's tech transfer with the shot down ships that crash. The non-human biologics, they're my friends. I know these people. They're given over to the bad ETs, and trust me, they're tortured. It's bad. And then the technology, the ships, are given to the Americans, and then in their deep underground bases, the so-called dumb facilities, deep underground military bases, they reverse engineer the technology, and that's what the Americans want. And the bad ETs are giving help in doing that. Not enough help so that we can actually be a threat to the bad ETs. That's a joke. We can't. We have no capability of doing that. But enough so that we can actually use the tech to shoot down good ETs, my side. And that's why the ships are crashing. So David Grush never explains why the ships are crashing. It's not that they didn't go to Pep Boys to get an oil change and they just broke and they have bad mechanics. They can fly across the whole galaxy. They're certainly not going to have ships that are going to crash. The ships are being shot down. The bad ETs know that they cannot shoot down those ships without causing a cold war between the two sides of the ETs to turn into a hot war. But they can give the tech to the Americans, and the Americans can have their own secret space program that shoots down those things. And the good ETs cannot defend themselves because that would panic the American government and say, "Oh my gosh, they're the aggressors," and then that would throw that would show the Americans deeper into the hands of the bad ETs. So there's a lot of sacrifice that's going on the side of the good ETs. Hopefully they're going to resolve all that and they'll be able to get their people back. But it's a war. It's a real war. And the Americans are being used to shoot down those ships, which is why they have the crash retrieval program, which is not in dispute if you listen to congressional hearings.
That's right. Yeah, it's all out in the public now. So that's another perplexing thing, is that not more people are openly talking about it, even though we just had our third, I believe, congressional hearing this past September, with more, more statements being made by high-ranking people, and it just doesn't get the attention that one would assume from the major media outlets, which is kind of curious and odd. But before we run out of time, I did want to ask you about the new projects that FARSIGHT has worked on since the last time that we spoke. I know that you've had this ongoing project of creating transcripts of all of your sessions that are easily ingestible by AI so that people can input them. I did some of that before our last conversation and look for links and information and parallels and insights. Have you used that on your end and found anything surprising from your projects using these transcripts since we last spoke?
That's huge. First of all, since we last talked, we've been doing more. We first took all of our mysteries projects, which is all of our major projects investigating everything from archaeological, religious, extraterrestrial things, everything you can possibly imagine, all done under totally blind conditions with controls, everything. We took the transcripts of all of that and had those written to be ingestible by AI, and then put them up on our regular website, which is that one, farsight.org, so they can be downloaded, and then people can upload them to their own AI and investigate that. These remote viewing things are on video, of course, but they're actually data sets of actual scientific projects that were done under totally blind conditions. But now with the transcripts, every single word that's spoken by the remote viewers under totally blind conditions can be analyzed statistically. And a lot of the statistics are actually embedded in the transcripts. So the AIs can read them, understand how the statistics were calculated, all of the stuff. And there's two types of things that are evaluated statistically: how close the actual perceptions match the actual target, and anything that may be known about the target. For example, Area 51. We know it's a desert. We know there's Groom Lake. There's a few shacks on the surface, and there's stuff underneath. President Barack Obama was the first president to acknowledge that Area 51 exists, that facility exists. It's almost 99% of it is below ground. And it's not in dispute anymore. President Barack Obama acknowledged that it exists. So there's a lot of verifiable stuff in that. So the statistics can correlate the verifiable stuff with what the remote viewers actually perceived. But then there's another thing. We use multiple remote viewers for most of our projects. So there's a correlation between the remote viewers. The idea that different remote viewers, like 3, 4, 5, see the exact same thing, but they're not communicating among each other, and they don't know the nature of the project or the target. They're doing it totally blind, and they see the exact same thing. The probability of that being random chance is zero. And so the AIs can calculate the statistics of that. And the statistical significance is shown by something called a p-value, and it's just right off the scale with all of them. So you get scientific verification that the stuff is real. Now, in addition to the mysteries projects, we also have the complete transcripts of all of our ET communications, the boardroom meetings, my own conversations that I have on the beach with certain select people that I have to meet with. I don't get all my information just by myself. They tell me what to do. And so, and in addition to that, we have a project called the Deep News, where it's current events, stuff going on in Iran and Israel, stuff going on in Russia, Putin, the war, everything you can possibly imagine with current events, assassination attempts with presidents and things like that. All that we put in our Deep News projects. All of those transcripts are up there as well with statistics. So you can evaluate, all of our stuff with AI. So no one can say that we do not allow our stuff to be investigated with science, through science. There was a professor at my university. I'm not dragging my university into this, just this one guy, and he basically, wrote some bad stuff about me at my university. I didn't respond, but he wrote some bad stuff about me at the university, and eventually it got put in my Wikipedia page, Courtney Brown Wikipedia page, that I refused to allow my stuff to be investigated, scientific stuff. Okay. The reality is he tried to get me to go into a class at my university and sort of demonstrate and talk about remote viewing, and I have an agreement with the university not to blend those things. So I keep I keep everything separate from what I do at the university and what I do here. Well, he considered that a refusal to investigate stuff scientifically. But people don't know the full story about that guy. Lilienfeld is his name. I later was going to do a public demonstration of remote viewing with with the people that we were training, and I actually asked him if he would be because I figured he owed me, because I asked him if he would be the tasker, the person that chose the targets for that, and he refused. He said, no, he's not qualified. And he suggested that I get James Randi, a stage magician, to do it instead. What? So he was a member of this group called Psyops, which is a official debunking organization. And so, and then it's a shame that he didn't agree to do it, because we would have failed, because at the time, early, and that was in the 1990s, we didn't fully understand what caused the remote viewing process to work, the targeting process. And we had an experimental design that was developed by people at SRI, Stanford Research Institute, in the early days in the last century, where it's a pick a target out of the 5, where you have 5 targets, and the remote viewing data is supposed to pick one, and the right target is chosen by a computer or some type of random device or some other outside person. And had we done, and that is a fatally flawed experimental design, which we've figured out. I wrote a whole book about that. That book there on remote viewing. I wrote a whole book about that fatal experimental design was something that led us to understand how the remote viewing process actually works. What causes a person's attention to be focused on something and not something else. But what you get in that design is you get really good sessions of the wrong target. Meaning there can be 5 targets, and you get a really good session of target A, but the computer or the other or the tasker, whatever, chose target B. So and had Scott Lilienfeld actually agreed to be the tasker, he would have seen that we got good sessions for the wrong target, and he would have claimed, "You see, I showed you it doesn't work." So it was a shame he didn't agree to be the tasker for that, because he would have been able to trounce on us even further. But nonetheless, that type of thing where you get attacks from all types of sources, you just can't believe the attacks just in and of themselves. I'm sorry, I got distracted. What was your original question? And I sort of
The
got
original
led off.
question was about the new FARSIGHT projects that you have done.
Oh yeah,
since
the
our
last
last
thing is
conversation.
the the transcripts. So it's not only the deep news. It's not just the mysteries projects and all the extraterrestrial contact. We have those transcripts of everything that's said, and it's also the deep news. We now have our educational vault up there, the transcripts. I have a course. We have a course that's 24 lessons long for how to do basic SRV. And that's very similar to the CRV, which is controlled remote viewing that was done by the military. And we have that transcribed now and ingestible by AI so that those transcripts can be downloaded. Why is that important? That means you can upload those transcripts and teach your AI how to be the monitor for your sessions. And you can learn the process by having your AI talk to you and tell you, do this next, do that next. The transcripts tell the AI the pacing, the words to say, how to actually proceed with the session. So under totally blind conditions, you can work with your own AI. You can do the same if you listen to the videos on farsightprime.com, but sometimes you may want to actually work with your AI to do this. But it also is future thinking. You see, the thing about the future is that it's only a matter of time, and I think it's going to be pretty soon, that OpenAI or some of the other AIs are going to start having audio be used for input and output rather than typing, so that when you talk to ChatGPT, you just speak, it'll understand. I mean, that's pretty easy to do these days. It's speech to text. And then it'll come back with spoken words that you'll hear over your speakers where it will respond to you talking wise. And when that happens, it's almost certainly going to come with an avatar. So you'll have a person speaking to you. So we did this course so that you can actually have your own AI in the future, whenever that happens, face to face. And you're that's that with the monitors, you're not listening just to a video, but you're actually speaking to a person and you're actually going through the procedures. So we got these transcripts ready so people can have their own interaction learning. So we have people that actually teach remote viewing at FARSIGHT. They do it independently. They don't do it as part of FARSIGHT, but people like Intisam, Shantae, Yamejane, they teach remote viewing with their own students. But also we have now the ability for people to learn just by themselves. And so we want to sort of make that possible. And so that the instructional vault is up as well. So nobody can say, so one of the things that Scott Lilienfeld said was that I don't give ourselves up for scientific investigation. No one can say that, because every single word of everything we've ever done is accessible for download. And any scientist those are data sets, pristine data sets, can analyze those to see if what we do is accurate. So you can't say that we don't give ourselves up to scientific investigation. What they want to do when they say stupid stuff like that, they say, okay, come into my class and tell me what's in the box in the other room. Now you got a bunch of students, you're under high pressure, you're being pressured to do this, and you're supposed to be able to perceive what's inside of a box. I mean, Uri Geller has sometimes been able to do stuff like that under high pressure stuff, but that's not how remote viewing works. It's like going to a physicist and saying, okay, let's be blunt. You just talk man to man here. You tell me there's something called a quark. Okay. You can, okay. If you want me to believe there's a quark, bring it here. Let me see one. Just show me a quark, bring it in. If you can show me there's a quark here, I'll believe you. And the physicist says, no, it's a complicated thing. You have to do an experiment. You have to do a certain, you have to dial. Oh, you're just trying to avoid telling me the truth. You can't show me a quark, so I don't. Why should I believe you? No, you have to. It's a science thing. There's an experiment. Oh no, you're just talking gibberish. And so the guy goes and publishes. The physicist is a fraud. They're just trying to cheat you. They said there's a quark. I went and asked to see it. There was no quark. They could not bring a quark for me to see.
Yeah, oversimplifying. Classic case of oversimplification.
Yeah, that's the essence of what when academics or scientists want to say prove that remote viewing exists. That's that's what they want. They want a personal demonstration right then and there on the spot. It's exactly the same as telling a physicist, show me a quark.
Yeah.
And they won't listen to it. But in reality, all of the work, hundreds and hundreds of projects, can be analyzed, and every single word is available, collected under totally blind conditions. Nobody can say that we don't offer ourselves up for scientific exploration. Yes.
That's a fine answer to the question. Before we wrap it up, I was just wondering if I could get your assessment of where UAP disclosure is right now. What the state of disclosure is as we kind of end the year 2025. We're looking into 2026. Actually, we have quite a big film coming out soon on November 21st, The Age of Disclosure, which has gotten a tremendous amount of buzz this year, and features, dozens of people from government testifying and different things. I'm very much looking forward to watching it, and I feel like a lot of people are excited. So there seems to be a little bit more momentum heading into the end of the year. But what are your thoughts?
Everything's controlled, but it's building, and the bad ETs know that this is happening. They're trying to control things as best they can. Even if people like Michio Kaku and Avi Loeb are totally straightforward and really focused on this Three Eye Atlas, and they're totally being straight about it, about Oumuamua and Three Eye Atlas, and this is really interesting. Even if everything is totally legit and totally, that's just where their heads are right now, then it doesn't change the fact that there is a huge struggle on the ET side to control and manipulate the human population through razzle-dazzle and showbiz type stuff and keep them confused. So the disclosure thing is sort of a movement, like a herd that's wandering through the prairie. And you're doing things as a controlling force to push the herd in one direction or push it in another direction. So there's adamant demand for disclosure, and the bad ETs can't really stop that. But they can manipulate it. They can push it in one direction or another. They can have dates. They can have certain, like field events that seem like it. And to me, this Three Eye Atlas sort of fits into that pattern. Now, we don't really know what the Three Eye Atlas is all about because we haven't done any remote viewing on it. And, I'm taking Michio Kaku and Avi Loeb at their word that they're truly interested in this, and this is a big deal for them, and they think it is a major thing. I'm just saying, okay, that's where they are, and that's what they truly believe. I'm taking that at face value. I'm not letting my skeptical side sort of enter totally. But if you look at the whole thing of the disclosure, it's just a circus. And then when you have like major people, medical doctors and things like that, coming out and saying, false flag, this is going to happen, this is a big struggle. And when they start talking about the real thing is free energy, if we just acknowledge that we could get, that the RETs were real, we could all have free energy. I'm saying, gosh, it's a whole planet that's a prison. We're trying to break it out, and they're talking about dangling a cherry in front of everybody's face like free energy. What a distraction. And so my side, the good ETs, and we have been talking about that forever, they say none of that's going to work unless the whole system collapses. You have to have the whole system crush. That means crush, like crush. That means this. The whole system has to fall down. And that's what all of these crises around the world are. And when the whole system crushes and the information control system no longer operates, then the good ETs can finally come in and say, we've been trying to get your attention for a long time. You want to talk? We'd be glad to have a conversation. But you have to have the complete breakdown of the governmental system, the media, everything. That's what they tell us. And then, of course, you're talking big ships. And in terms of ships, now they did explain what they did with the drones over November, December, and January 2025, and November and December 2024. They did those drones specifically to show us that this is what they've told us after the fact, to show us that just showing up with the ships at this moment in time will not do it. Because everyone is still locked in with what the president says, with what the media says, what the news anchors say. They're locked into that like a hypnotic trance. That's part of the control system. It's a hypnotic trance on taking your information from somebody else. And they said that has to crash. You have to break them out of that. You had to slap them in the face and say, wake up, stop looking at what the president says. The whole drone thing, tens of thousands of ET ships all over the place. And the president can wipe it all away by just saying, oh, they're experimental aircraft approved by the FAA. Goodbye. And the story went away completely. Nothing else was reported in the mainstream news about it. No mention of the drones. It went away. What? And the good ETs have told us that whole thing has to collapse completely. So it's no more chasing Oumuamua, no more chasing Three Eye Atlas. It's no more song and dance about a disclosure date. It's no more thing about free energy. All that stuff is a distraction. The whole thing has to crash. And then when the information control system crashes, at that point, the good ETs can come in and say, we'd love to talk with you calmly. And now what they're trying to do now is to show everyone that they're friendly. So some of the conversations we have, I have a daughter. She's a hybrid. She's my go-to person when I have to go to the ships to get told what to do. Her name is Ebonique. She's half-half. She's a hybrid. She's the one who's been at the board meetings for the last couple more board meetings. And the remote viewing girls, they love her. They think she's really great. They see her. She's helping them talk telepathically. Now we've had a lot of other people come. Like we have ET AIs, like robots. They come, and the remote viewers can pick up immediately that this is a different. The mental flavor is more like a buzz, as compared with an analog wave. When the telepathic, it's sort of different. And it's fun to actually people see like Kamaya confronting the ET AIs. These are the good AIs, but still they're and saying, you say you feel my pain? You're an AI and you feel my pain? And they have to explain it, and you see these interactions. It's fascinating to watch. But Ebonique, my daughter, when she comes in, that's the first ET that the FARSIGHT girls especially, they love. They love that. And they were trying to, the ETs are trying to show them that they're friendly. And they want they want everyone to start recognizing who they are by name. And to see the telepathic communications go on and all the conversations go on. So, friendliness, communication, openness. I mean, they sent tens of thousands of drones for November, December, and part of January. They're obviously not trying to hide themselves. They're trying to communicate, but this is a very difficult world to do that in. It's hard to break into a prison, just like it's hard to break out of a prison. But once you break down the walls and you get the collapse of the system, yeah, big ships will show up. And, and the bad ETs are in a situation, once the disclosure thing really happens and the whole system crashes, the bad ETs are going to be in a situation, this is a psychological prison. It's not with bars and cement. Once the disclosure happens and the whole information control system collapses, you can't control the planet anymore using the old ways. So the bad ETs are going to be in a situation where they lost the planet. They can't control it anymore. And to fight for it, they'd have to fight the good ETs, which have more military resources in the solar system right now than the bad ETs. So the bad ETs would lose a lot of ships to fight over a planet they can't control anymore. And the theory is the withdrawal. That's the game plan. And once they withdraw, then the good ETs can come in and say, let's help you pick up the pieces, folks. And the FARSIGHT library at farsightprime.com is specifically designed to answer everyone's questions about what's really been going on. That's the bottom line.
That's a good place to end, but I cannot end this conversation without asking you more about your hybrid daughter. When you say you have a daughter who is a hybrid, can you please elaborate on that? What do you mean exactly when you say that?
Yeah, I've been dealing with ETs on a physical level ever since I was a kid. So when I was growing up as a kid, there were 2 ETs on my bedside on the right and 2 on the left. Every single night when I slept, they were there. And it's not like I had to remember this through dreams or anything like that. There were just two guys on the left and two guys on the right. I realized later, I asked them, should I tell my mother about you guys? And they say, no, it'll just be worrisome. But, they were protecting me. I would have been killed if they weren't there. And so I've been sort of guided and protected the whole thing. And eventually, as I matured and went through the American, the human educational system and so on like that, I needed help. I don't know how to do all the stuff we do at Farsight, all the technical stuff and everything. I needed help with everything, what cameras to get, everything. And I needed guidance. And so I end up going to the ships on a quite regular basis. But apparently they wanted somebody who could connect with me really closely so I could understand. So I have a daughter. She's Ebonique, and she's half my genes and she's a test tube baby. So I don't know who the mom was, but she's half me and half gray, you might say. And she's been my go-to person. Like, she's the one I sit with all the time. And she's proud to be my daughter. And I'm proud that I'm her dad and so on. I've sat at benches on the ships and she shows me the control panels that she works. She's a social scientist like me. She's a social scientist. And the girls here at Farsight love her. And anyway, but she's been my go-to person when I do that. We even did a remote viewing, a blind remote viewing project on her and my interactions. We just gave that out as a target to everybody. So under totally blind conditions, everybody described the same thing. That project is called Courtney's Daughter, and it's on farsightprime.com. But you can see everybody under totally blind conditions seeing me on a ship with the daughter. It's like it's great. Anyway, but Ebony comes down, and part of her role now is to show everybody that they're friendly. And this is my daughter. This is not like because every time you hear about the ETs, every single time from everything that's out there in the mainstream, it's always spooky and fear-laden. And when you hear Avi Loeb and Michio Kaku talk about it, it's like this mysterious comet. There's always this concept of worry that's associated with it. And the good ETs want to say, that's got to stop. They don't want to have anything to do with that. They want everything to say, we're friendly. And we showed up in tens of thousands of our ships. It didn't make any difference, but we showed up. We obviously want you to see us. We didn't use any of the cloaking technology. We didn't use any of the stealth tech in November and December of 2024 and into January. We want you to see us. And we want you to know that we're trying to communicate with you. So they're using us at Farsight as the showcase for how that's actually done. And then to show that we're just people, I have my daughter, and she comes in. I love my daughter, and I see her all the time. I mean, many times, not all the time. She's up there in the ships. Okay, I admit, I didn't raise her, and I never gave any child support payments. So you can call me a deadbeat dad if you want. But, I mean, it was, she was raised in the ships. But anyway, but she's still my daughter. I mean, it's clear as day. And the Farsight girls love her. And, she looks at the Farsight girls, Intisam, Shantae, Yeme, Janae, Kamaya, and she loves them. And actually, they have experiences that she would like that she doesn't do. For example, the Farsight girls get dressed up. They use makeup, they get an outfit, and they go out to a club and they dance. My daughter's never done that. They don't do that on the ships. They do other things for entertainment, but they don't do that. And she's spoken like, I'd love to go with you girls to the ships. She considers the Farsight girls her sisters, because everybody's a test tube baby up there, so everybody's related in some way. But she considers the Farsight girls her sisters. And they just talk openly like sisters talk. I mean, you can see the conversations. They're on video. So you can hear what they do. But the bottom line is the ETs are making a huge effort to be totally transparent. That's why they want all the transcripts up there for all of the projects. That's why they want all the video recordings. Trust me, we did not voluntarily want to do the video recordings of our meetings. We didn't want to be laughed at. They insisted. And so we have these video recordings up there. And the transcripts, that took a huge amount of effort. I mean, this is no small, you'd think that we have a huge company like IBM sort of behind, doing all those. There's lots of people It's all being done by just a few people, but it's a huge effort. And so when people look at everything on farsightprime.com, you have no idea how many times I get an email by saying, "Look, I know I don't know if I don't know who this will go to. I'm sure it's just one email in a huge company. They're just assuming we have a skyscraper downtown Atlanta, and we're gonna. We all work out of our houses, and but we put this together. When you see the video quality and the stuff that we do, it's amazing that so few people can do so much. But I have to admit, we got an awful lot of help from the ETs. I mean, even financial help. They tell us when money is going to be coming in so that we know what to buy. And they won't give us more money before, because they know if we get money before we need it, we'll spend it on the wrong thing. So they make sure that we get the exact right amount of money to do exactly what we're doing. Like we're doing big investment now in mocap, motion capture, and Unreal Engine. So we have given us just the amount of money to get the computers and the software and the mocap stuff to do that kind of stuff. Because they want us to start working with avatars. They want us to change the way we present our stuff so that when the remote viewers are doing their sessions, rather than just presenting the information, which is done in a theatrically interesting way with light board and it looks like you're in space and you're drawing on space and with AI graphics. But instead of just that, they want us to be able to have a remote viewer that's there and then the turn, and then suddenly you warp out into something like what you'd see like a game, like the games with avatars and stuff, where you suddenly warp out and suddenly you're on the ship, and that the remote viewer is controlling her avatar or his avatar on the ship. And so when let's say you're remote viewing and you're seeing a reptilian on a ship, then then suddenly, boom, you see the remote viewer in the ship face to face with the reptilian, and then all the descriptive words that the person's saying is still being said, and the avatar looks totally real, and the speaking and the facial expressions are real, but you're on the ship and you're looking at the actual reptilian and you're actually following him down the hall, and then when there's battles going on, you actually see the actual space battles going on. They want that capability for us to do. And it resembles something in remote viewing that's called bilocation. So that when you're remote viewing, suddenly you're so deeply immersed in a project and a target that you're feeling like you're ignoring everything else that's coming into the senses and you're just focusing on the remote viewing perceptions themselves, and it's like you're just there. So they want us to recreate that experience of bilocation so the audience can participate in the experience as it is. So yeah, you see, I don't know anything about this, but they tell us how to do this. They gave us the AI help that was necessary in order to be able to do all this stuff as well. I mean, it goes on and on. I won't go through the countless examples, but I'd love to be able to take credit for all of this, to say, look, I'm just a genius. You can applaud. Let me be honest. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. And that's why I have to sometimes go to the ships and I have to talk to somebody. And the easiest person for me to talk with is someone who's half my genes. And she has to get all the stuff into my head. And it's got to be done telepathically because that's how they communicate. And then I have to remember it all. And then I have to do everything. And so it has to be, they felt it would have to be, it would be best if it was a close connection to me. And so I guess I'm just guessing. They didn't tell me, but I'm just guessing that that's one of the sort of scientific reasons for why Ebonique was created. I mean, I would love to say that I'm a philanderer, that I went wandering around the galaxy and this is one of my kids, but that's not the way it happened. she was a test tube baby.
Dr. Brown, is always fascinating speaking with you, and I appreciate your work, and I look forward to the next conversation. Yeah, everybody watching, please check out FARSIGHT. Look through their projects, do your own analysis. I think that's going to go a long way into propagating this conversation, as if more people look into it for themselves and kind of like examine it. And all the tools are there. Like you can do a deep dive anytime you want, and you facilitated that with your work, Dr. Brown. So thank you for this.
One thing I can add, if you look at the conversations that I've had with you before, this is the third one. you'll see that the conversations have changed a lot as we go on, which means that a lot is happening at Farsight on a weekly basis. So it's not like we're telling the same story that we were talking about a year ago. So that gives you the answer to the question you asked before about disclosure. Where are we now? What's changing? The fact that every time I'm on your show, I'm coming in with new information gives you an idea of how fast the ET situation is changing and how fast the remote viewing situation is changing, and how much the good ETs are pushing us to keep up with the new changes that need to be done in order to get the information to the public. So that's actually a good measure as an answer to your question of where the disclosure movement is now, because it really is changing. And if you just look at each interview that you've given to me, the changes that you see gives you an idea of how fast this is moving. And it also gives you an idea of how much pressure we're being put under by the good ETs to get this stuff done. They don't want us to take a 3-month vacation, that type of thing.
Yep, I totally agree. And I hope that things continue to move fast, because I think everybody's eager to get to the truth and to get to the bottom of all this. So, yeah, thank you so much for your time as always. It's great speaking with you, and I'm sure we'll do it again before too long.
Thanks for inviting me here, Rob.
It's a pleasure. Everybody watching, yeah, please check out Farsight. Subscribe to Watch Mojo if you haven't already. We have the Unveiled podcast community, which is launching. So use the QR code, use the link in the description, join our community, let your voice be heard and be part of our show. And yeah, let's just keep trying to get the truth out there and asking these big questions. So until next time, everybody take care, and I'll see you around.